So how did you get involved with the winemakers?
Well, in '77 when we opened and got our state, liquor license, or wine and beer license then, they of course came peddling their wine. And I liked the wines a great deal, and I liked them a great deal. In general, they're just wonderful people.
And who were those guys, who were the first ones that walked through the door?
I think David Lett from Ivory Vineyards was the first. And then right then also Myron Redford from Amity Vineyards. And soon after that, Dick Erath and Dick Ponzi and Bill Fuller from Tualatin. And then also getting Chuck Coury was around also. And really nice, bright, intelligent, and wonderful senses of humor in all of them. Yeah, nice people. And their families. Terrific. Yeah.
So tell me about like the Oregon wine industry, like at the beginnings, from your perspective, is like seeing these guys coming into here, both peddling and then also having meetings here.
They had some meetings in the back, and they had meals here, and they were glad to have a place that was tried to make good food and was friendly and warm, I believe, and really made some nice friendships out of that. They'd use the back room sometimes for some technical meetings and exchange information, and it was always fun to sit in on that and listen and learn.
So what did you hear?
Oh, most of it was dealing with some problems with weather, comparing what they had made and how they had made it, and talking about it. I learned that it's a very difficult business, and that vintages some of them are tough to handle. But there are
in terms of
the weather, the rain at harvest, rain before harvest, not enough heat through the summertime, and whether or not to let the stuff hang longer because threatening weather is coming, and blah blah, on and on and on.
Yeah,
they're farmers.
And when you listen back, like they're back in the back room back there, and you're listening. It's like, do you hear arguments? Do you hear what do you hear back there?
No, not arguments really. Really, generally speaking, they're really fine people, and it was an exchange of information. It wasn't arguing. They're very generous with each other in terms of ideas. In terms, I've heard stories of equipment. Somebody's press break down, and someone else had one, and they'd race it over to them, so they could finish their harvest. It wasn't. Of course, they were competing for sales and all, but it wasn't competitive, and certainly wasn't cutthroat. They were much more helping one another, than competing with one another. And I came from California, so I had kind of a California palate. Although I didn't know a lot about wine, coming from there, you tended to get used to bigger wines. And
go ahead.
Yeah.
So, how long, like of a period of time, did you see these like winemakers, coming here? Because over the years it's changed, and many more people started coming in.
Well, when we started, there were 6 wineries in operation.
In Yamhill or in this area?
In the vicinity, within, say, a 20-mile radius. And a couple more opened right when we did, like Sokol Blosser opened right then. Adelsheim came on the scene. Elk Cove was not long behind that. Bethel Heights. And those also are really terrific folks. Really, really, the core of the industry is really wonderful.
So you met them too?
Sure.
The Castiles and...
Oh, yeah. They're great people.
Yeah,
I really like them, and but I had no idea. Now there's 400 and some odd wineries in the state.
It's amazing.
360 or 70 in the Willamette Valley. I never would have predicted that.
Really?
I had no clue.
So
I thought it was going to always be just kind of a small industry, just found a place for itself and making premium Pinots, beautiful wine. But it's really turned into something.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
So why do you think that happened? From listening to the guys in the back room back there.
Well, I think several things will work. One is that it's a great place. Obviously, we know now to make Pinot Noir. And the first people who did it, I think, as they went around the country and trying to sell their wine and talking to people, did a better job than they expected. because they sold them on the place, not just buying wine, but then coming here.
Yeah.
And a lot of winemakers, like Don Lang, he came. I forget what the wine was he tasted, Erath wine, I believe it was. But, he's kind of a second tier. Although now looking back, he's really one of the earliest. But he's sort of one of the second tier. And he came because of the people, and he knows that. He acknowledges that. Uh-huh. He said to me, we had a conversation one time about this, and he was talking. He said that for example, like what Mondavi did in California was a no-brainer. You can grow stuff down there.
Yeah.
But what Lett and these other guys did up here was a stroke of genius. It wasn't obvious that this was the place for Pinot Noir. It is now, but it wasn't then, and it was a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So like all this growth is in some ways kind of a surprise.
To me it is, but I can't claim it is to everyone. But to me it was. I thought it would always be a rather small industry. And I suppose compared to California and stuff, it is still truly small. But it ranks up there in the state's agricultural products. I think it might be third, maybe second in dollars. Dollars brought in. Do you know?
I can't remember, like, in terms of agricultural dollars. In terms of, like, production, Oregon is third
behind California
and Washington, which is pretty phenomenal.
It is.
In a short amount of time.
Within the state.
I can't remember.
Just recently, the decorative plants, nursery plants and that kind of stuff, that zoomed to number one. And it used to be grass seed was number one. And I think grass seed now might be 2 and grapes 3.
Yeah.
It's up there. It's certainly in the top 5
of
agricultural products.
So, now put on your crystal ball, or look at your crystal ball, and you've seen it from 1977 to 30 years later.
Yeah.
Look forward. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I absolutely know. I sweetie. Call your mom. Why? She called.
Just do it.
Yeah. Well, I was so incapable 30 years ago of coming anywhere near guessing what was going to happen. I was so wrong. I don't really trust myself to guess now. I think it's still growing. There's still some really small operators that are producing beautiful stuff. There's some big money that's come into the state in this industry. Some people with a lot of money that have built beautiful facilities. And then, the CalPERS investment up here, that's significant. Those 200 acres west of Carlton, that's interesting. So what the future is going to bring, seems like there's a lot of planning going on still. A lot of people are starting large operations, and still people starting very, very small ones, 900 cases a year, 1,500 cases a year. And beautiful wine.
Yeah.
So I guess it's going to keep going. I hope it doesn't become a Napa-like area where it's just everything is over the top.
What do you mean?
It's too much money. It's really a nice place to live, and I hope that doesn't.
The Oregon here,
right around this valley. It's really a wonderful place to live, and I hope that isn't lost because of the success of the wine country and the wine business.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will be, actually.
What makes you say that?
Well, we had the land use problems that we're having in the state. When several years ago a measure passed, it was pretty well sold to the
37.
Yeah. And recently the new one, 49.
49.
And I have hopes that that's going to keep under control. So you drive out of McMinnville, in 3 or 4 minutes you're in the country.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
No subdivision stretching out to between here and Newburgh. You really see countryside. And between here and Carlton is great farmland.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was much of a prediction, but that's as close as I can come to one, I think.
Yeah. When you think about like Oregon wines, like you came from California, and just out of curiosity, what part of California?
Bay Area.
Bay Area,
yeah. Well, I'd lived in San Francisco, and I was living in the East Bay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So what brought you up here?
Chance to get this restaurant. I had friends in the town, and they told me that this little place was closed down, and they were trying to sell the lease and the equipment for nothing, almost nothing.
Wow!
And I decided to take a chance. I had never been in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
And, I just had home recipes, and I came up and started, and I've not gotten rich by any means, but I've had a lot of fun.
That's a huge leap from
but
the Bay Area.
I knew I was going to have to leave that area, because it was even then it was so expensive. And coming up here sounded interesting, and if this didn't work, then I'd get a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
did you have like kids when you moved up here?
Yeah.
Right there.
Daughter, yeah. She was 2.5, and then her sister was born a year and a half later.
Yeah. So what was the attractant to this area?
Well, it was, I think, a chance to take a chance on a restaurant with very little risk, financial risk.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, McMinnville is
it was 12,000 people then.
Small, and there's farmers all around, and farmers don't go out to dinner.
Not much.
Yeah.
No, you're right. But and to be honest, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the wineries.
Huh.
The support directly by coming to dinner, and also by sending their customers here and tourists. And then the tourism that grew with the wine industry has really been terrific for us.
Oh, that's interesting.
Our busiest time is exactly tourist time, from June to October.
Yeah.
Right now we're slower. January, February, really slow.
Uh-huh.
And then it just slowly picks up. And then, August, the gross will be 2 times January, 2.5 times what we do in the month of January.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's obvious the wineries keep us going.
Yeah. Because of the tourists that come into the wineries, and most of your business, 50% of your business, or what percent?
Well, at that time of the year, yes. This time of the year, probably 20%, 30%.
Are tourists.
Tourists,
Yeah. The hardcore guys.
That's right. And
Yeah.
they want to come when the crowds aren't here.
Yeah. Huh.
So
you were saying that you kind of actually attribute like the building of your business to to these early guys coming in.
Yes.
And and sending people your way.
Right.
Yeah. How did it's like I'm kind of curious about like that relationship. Like you said, maybe David Lett was the first one that came in.
David or Myron, I think it was Dave, but it was very close.
Yeah.
And Myron's they've both been customers for 30 years, and friends.
Yeah.
Friends.
And when they walked through that front door,
mm-hmm.
and they gave you some wine to try, like what were your thoughts?
Well, I liked the stuff immediately. I knew this was really nice wine. And I'm here, and they're here, and I wanted to have their wines on the list. For a while, I had every wine produced on my wine list.
Wow.
If someone brought it in, I put it on the list.
Uh-huh.
And that, of course, became impossible once there were 20, 30 wineries. I couldn't do every single wine they made. But when there was 8 and 9, I could.
Yeah. And what was, what were reactions of, like, people that came in? I mean, and you've got 2 groups of people, like the locals and then the tourists.
Well, initially, there was a prejudice among local people against the local wine. Yeah, true. I mean,
really?
If it's from Oregon, it can't be as good as California wine. And that took a few years to overcome.
Wow.
Before people realized it was really something of value.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And so what got people past that?
Well, I think it was just their ability to taste and realize something is good. This is good. And the other, I think, was validation in national publications. And then when Dave Lett's wine came in second in that tasting in Paris, that must have been about 1980, maybe? 79, possibly. His 75 South Block came in second in a tasting of Burgundies. And that gave validation to the area. And so it was the combination of people trusting their own palate and those that couldn't do that of trusting publications and competitions.
Yeah.
And then once a wine got written up as being good, then people say, "Oh yes, it is good." Kind of dumb, but it happens that way.
Yeah. What about the tourists that would come through and they saw your wine selection and
Well, initially, I've always had such a heavy slant to the local wines. I mean, I'll show you a book later.
Okay.
It's nice. Some people were a little surprised, but tourists actually are here for the local wine.
Yeah.
So they wanted it, and
so they're open to it.
They're open to it. Yeah. Some of the locals, it took a little longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. I think it's valid. I don't know. You might talk to the winemakers.
Actually, I've heard that from other people too.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you're frontline, person.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Nick, tell me about like the Pinot, like your involvement and like how it all started and where it started.
For the celebration, the
Yes.
Pinot. Yeah. It started with a real estate guy in town wanted to do some kind of a festival for wine and to promote McMinnville. And we had some meetings and got some wine people involved, and all of a sudden we decided we didn't want any part of something that would be like a carnival, or we want to do something as first class as we could.
Uh-huh.
And
what was the rationale of going in that direction? Because like the real estate guy seems like he'd want...
Yes, yeah, but the wineries didn't want to do that. They didn't want to cheapen their image, I suppose. And there are plenty of those kind of events going on. There's one at the coast every year at not Lincoln City, but Newport Wine and Food Festival or whatever.
Right.
And that's a big event and successful. They didn't want to recreate that. So we had some meetings in '85 and started planning it out. And first it was going to be the Oregon Pinot Noir celebration, and then we got some interest out of California. So we're going to call it the American. And then somebody said, well, gee, why don't we see if we can get somebody from Burgundy to come? They did. And that was, I think, Dave Adelsheim was responsible for that. And that became the International Pinot Noir celebration. And it's one of the best wine events in the world.
And so it was international from day one.
Well, not day one in planning, but from the first event in '87. Yeah. Yes, It was international.
And who are the people involved in that, especially at the initial...
Well, David Lett was in, Ken Patton, he worked for HP here in town, and Bob Burnett. Those were two HP people. And a lot of wine people, Susan Blosser and David Lett. Erath was involved. Then some other town people, and got some funding from the Chamber of Commerce. Not much, like $5,000, and started working on it. Got the college involved, which was a big deal because Linfield College had a no alcohol policy, and the board of trustees, the chairman was a fellow named Frank Spears, and he loved Oregon Pinot, and he was chairman of the board of trustees, and he sold it to them as a symposium, a serious intellectual appreciation of Pinot Noir, which it is to some extent. And so that really changed it. It was a Baptist school and no alcohol allowed, and now there's a premier world-class wine event on the campus every year. People come from all over the world. It's wonderful. It's great for this little town too.
And so so now, like, what's the purpose? Like, what was the idea of doing?
Well,
that?
The name says it. It's a celebration of Pinot Noir. It's not a competition. There's never been any competition. No one has proclaimed the best Pinot in the world. None of that. It's to taste and talk, enjoy Pinot, have a nice time around the wine, and learn. Learn what's going on in Oregon. Learn what other parts of the world are doing. It's just a terrific event.
And so, what happens like at the festival then? It's like
they have
2 days or 3 days.
It's 3 days. They have symposiums and lectures. They have tours to the wineries and lunches outdoors out in the vineyards. Magnificent dinner on Friday night. Saturday night they do a salmon bake, which is a great, wonderful party out in Oak Grove at Linfield. It's a terrific event. And then Sunday morning there's a brunch, sparkling brunch with Pinot Noir, our sparkling wines made from Pinot Noir, in a terrific brunch. It's a great event. Yeah.
And so, like, what happens like during those 3 days? Is like, are people going? Is it just a mix of people just mixing with each other, or are there structured kinds of...
Oh, no, structured things going on. There's free time and also structured time with lectures on anything from barrels, different types of barrels and Pinot Noir, and tasting it, different approaches to vinification and tasting the results and talking about it, but never a competition. Yeah, and that's really been the smart thing, because there would be no purpose for the French to come in the first place if it was going to be a competition.
Because they'd be afraid?
All they could do is lose. I mean, if they win, they're supposed to win. And if they don't win, it's big news. So the only thing, so just making it a celebration was a very smart decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whose idea was that?
I think it was just talked over at a board meeting. And whoever came up with it, I can't remember, it might have been Adelstein, but everyone immediately knew that was the right approach, the right way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And so this isn't open to the public.
Tickets are sold to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, they get about 700 people.
Okay.
But all the wineries that are there, they have to. The winemaker has to be there at all the events. They scatter them out at the meal, so almost every table will have a winemaker to sit at a table of 10 maybe and talk to the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrific.
And so it's limited to 700, or?
Well, actually, the tickets sold are maybe 600 because each winery gets a couple tickets, and so they have to. And I think 700 is about the max.
Yeah.
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 But it's really nice.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.